The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening when Lisa turned her beat-up Honda into the driveway of her small rental house. She was exhausted. Another double shift at the hospital and her feet were killing her. But that was life now. Ever since the divorce 2 years ago, it had been just her and the kids, and making ends meet meant working herself to the bone. Her daughter Amy, 8 years old, was waiting by the window like always. The moment Lisa's car pulled up, the little girl's face lit up. Her son Daniel, 10, was probably upstairs doing homework. Or at least she hoped he was doing homework and not playing video games on that old tablet she'd bought him for his birthday. Lisa grabbed her purse and hurried through the rain to the front door. Inside, the house smelled like the spaghetti Mrs. Patterson from next door had made for the kids. God bless that woman. Without her, Lisa didn't know how she'd manage the night shifts. Mom, guess what happened at school today? Amy rushed over, wrapping her arms around Lisa's waist. Lisa smiled, running her fingers through her daughter's hair. Tell me, sweetie. But before Amy could answer, Daniel came down the stairs and Lisa's smile faded. His shirt was torn at the collar and there was a fresh scrape on his elbow. Daniel, what happened? The boy shrugged, trying to act like it was nothing. Just some kids messing around at the bus stop. Messing around? Baby, your shirt is ripped. It's fine, Mom. Really, I'm okay. Lisa knelt down, looking into her son's eyes. She could see he was trying to be brave, trying not to worry her. But she knew. She'd seen the signs for weeks now. The kids in this neighborhood had been giving them trouble ever since they moved in 6 months ago. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Lisa first found this rental house, she thought it would be a fresh start. The rent was cheap enough that she could almost afford it on her salary. The schools were decent. The neighborhood seemed quiet. But she hadn't counted on the group of teenage boys who hung around the corner store every afternoon. They'd started small. Comments about her old car, snickering when she walked by carrying grocery bags. Then they began targeting the kids, pushing Daniel at the bus stop, making fun of Amy's clothes, which were mostly hand-me-downs from cousins. Last week, someone had spray-painted something nasty on their mailbox. Lisa had spent an hour scrubbing it off before the kids woke up for school. She wanted to do something about it. She wanted to march over to their houses and talk to their parents. But what could she say? She was new here. She didn't know anyone. And honestly, she was scared. Scared of making things worse. Scared of standing out even more than she already did. Because that's how she felt in this neighborhood. Like an outsider. Like someone barely hanging on. The other families had nice cars and well-kept lawns. They had 2 parents who shared the load. Lisa was just the single mom in the rundown house working crazy hours, driving a car that sounded like it might die any minute. To those teenagers on the corner, she probably looked like easy prey. The ringleader was a tall kid, maybe 17, with an attitude that screamed trouble. Lisa had seen him watching her house. She'd noticed him pointing it out to his friends, laughing about something. It made her skin crawl. Daniel, if those boys bother you again, you tell a teacher, okay? Lisa said, still kneeling in front of her son. Mom, that'll just make it worse. Then you tell me. I'll handle it. Daniel gave her a look that broke her heart. It was a look that said he didn't think she could handle it, that he was trying to protect her, just like she was trying to protect him. I'm serious, Daniel. Promise me. Okay, Mom, I promise. Lisa hugged both her kids tight, then glanced at the clock on the microwave. 5:30. She had to be at work by 6, and it was a 20-minute drive to the hospital. All right, you two. I need to get changed and head out. Mrs. Patterson's expecting you at 6:15 right after I leave. Do we have to go to Mrs. Patterson's? Amy whined. Her house smells like old lady perfume. Amy, that's not nice. Mrs. Patterson is very kind to watch you while I work nights. I know, but can't Daniel watch me? He's 10. Absolutely not. You're going to Mrs. Patterson's, and that's final. Lisa went upstairs and changed out of her scrubs into a fresh pair. She splashed water on her face and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, hair that needed a proper cut, not the DIY trim she'd been giving herself. She looked older than 34, but she couldn't think about that now. She had bills to pay and mouths to feed. Feeling sorry for herself was a luxury she couldn't afford. When she came back downstairs, she made sure the kids had everything they needed for the evening. Homework was packed. Pajamas were laid out. She'd be home by 7 in the morning, just in time to get them ready for school. Be good for Mrs. Patterson, she said, kissing them both on the forehead. We will, they said in unison. Lisa grabbed her keys and headed out into the rainy evening. As she backed out of the driveway, she saw them. The group of teenage boys standing under the awning of the corner store out of the rain. They were watching her house, watching her leave. A chill ran down her spine. She thought about turning around, about staying home tonight, calling in sick. But she couldn't afford to lose this shift. She was already behind on the electric bill, so she kept driving, telling herself she was being paranoid, telling herself that everything would be fine. At exactly 6:15, after Lisa had been gone for 20 minutes, she pulled into Mrs. Patterson's driveway with the kids. The elderly woman answered the door with a warm smile, ushering Daniel and Amy inside. Lisa thanked her profusely, as she always did, then headed to the hospital for another long night. Back at the corner store, the tall teenager pulled out his phone and sent a text to his 3 friends. "She's gone. House is empty. Let's do this." They'd been planning it for 2 weeks, watching her routine, timing her departure. They knew she worked the overnight shift Thursday through Sunday. They knew the kids went to the neighbor's house. They knew she'd be gone for at least 12 hours. To them, it was easy money. A single mom barely scraping by, working all hours. She probably had some cash hidden somewhere. Maybe some jewelry, electronics they could sell. And even if they didn't find much, it would be fun. A thrill, something to brag about. They had no idea who they were messing with, because what those boys didn't know, what nobody in the neighborhood knew, was that Lisa hadn't always been a struggling single mom driving a beat-up Honda. She hadn't always been someone who seemed small and helpless and easy to push around. There were things in that house. Things on the walls, things in frames and shadow boxes, things that told a very different story about who Lisa really was and what she was truly capable of. But they'd find out soon enough. As Thursday evening rolled around, right on schedule, Lisa kissed her kids goodbye and headed to work. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and glistening under the streetlights, and at the corner store, 4 teenage boys watched her car disappear down the road. Then they started walking toward her house. The 4 boys stood in the shadows across the street from Lisa's house, watching and waiting. The tall one, the leader of their little group, checked his phone. 9 o'clock. The house had been dark for hours now. "You sure about this?" one of the others asked. He was the youngest, barely 16, and his voice shook a little. "Relax, I told you she's at work. The kids are at the neighbor's, nobody's home. We get in, grab what we can, and get out. 10 minutes tops. What if someone sees us? Nobody's gonna see us. Everyone on this street minds their own business. That's why I picked this house. She's new here. Nobody knows her. Nobody cares." The youngest kid shifted nervously. "I don't know, man." "Breaking in? That's serious. You backing out now? After all the planning?" "No, Look, she's loaded, okay? You seen her car? That piece of junk? She's hiding her money somewhere. People like that always do. They don't trust banks. And even if we don't find cash, she's gotta have something worth taking." Another boy spoke up, trying to sound confident. "Yeah, and think about it. Who's she gonna call? The cops? She can barely afford rent. She's not gonna make waves." They'd been harassing this family for weeks now. It had started as entertainment. Something to do. The new single mom who always looked tired and defeated. The kids who wore the same clothes every week. The mailbox they'd vandalized. The trash cans they'd knocked over. But this was different. This was crossing a line, and somewhere deep down even the leader knew it. Still, he'd been talking about it for so long now, building it up to his friends. He couldn't back down. He'd look weak. "All right, let's go. And remember, we were never here." They crossed the street, keeping to the shadows, their hearts pounding. The neighborhood was quiet. Most people were inside watching TV or getting ready for bed. The house next door, where the old lady lived, had its lights on, but the curtains were drawn. They slipped around to the back of the house, where a wooden fence surrounded a small yard. The gate creaked when they opened it, and they all froze, listening. Nothing, no dogs barking, no voices, they were good. The back door had a simple lock. The third boy, who'd done this kind of thing before with his older brother, pulled out a credit card and wedged it between the door and the frame. It took him 3 tries, but the lock clicked open. They were in. The kitchen was dark and smelled like dish soap and coffee. They stood there for a moment, letting their eyes adjust, their phones providing small circles of light. "Spread out," the leader whispered. "Look for cash, jewelry, laptops, anything small we can carry." The youngest kid's hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped his phone. This felt wrong. Really wrong. But he followed the others into the living room. That's when things started to feel different. The living room wasn't what they expected. It was small and modestly furnished, sure. An old couch. A TV that was at least 5 years old. A coffee table with some kids' books on it. But the walls were covered with frames. One of the boys shined his light across the wall and they all stopped moving. Photos. Dozens of them. But not family photos. Not birthday parties or vacations, military photos. The leader stepped closer, his cocky attitude faltering for the first time. In the largest frame right in the center of the wall was a photo of Lisa. But she looked nothing like the tired, defeated woman they'd been tormenting. She was in full combat uniform, desert camouflage, helmet, tactical vest loaded with gear, and she was holding a rifle, standing at attention, her expression hard and focused. Behind her was sand and military vehicles. "Oh man," one of them whispered. "Dude, she's military." "So what? Lots of people are in the military." But the youngest kid was backing toward the door, because he was looking at the other frames now. Photos of Lisa in training, rappelling down ropes, doing obstacle courses, standing with other soldiers, all of them armed, all of them looking deadly serious. And then there were the shadow boxes. 3 of them mounted on the wall in a neat row. Inside were medals, ribbons, patches, the kind of stuff they'd seen in movies but never in real life. One of the boys moved closer to read the plaques beneath the shadow boxes. His mouth went dry. "Purple Heart," he read aloud. "That's for getting wounded in combat." Next to it was another medal. Bronze Star. The plaque said something about valor and courage under fire. "Guys, we need to leave. Now." But the leader was stubborn. He'd come this far. "It's just medals. So she was in the army or whatever. She's still just some single mom now. Keep looking." They moved through the house, but the confidence was gone. Every room they entered had more signs of who this woman really was. In the hallway upstairs, there were framed certificates, commendations, awards for marksmanship, hand-to-hand combat training, leadership courses. One certificate caught the youngest kid's attention. It was for completion of advanced combat training, the kind of training that taught soldiers how to handle the most dangerous situations, how to fight, how to survive, how to neutralize threats. He thought about how they'd been treating her kids, pushing them around, mocking them. He thought about how Lisa always smiled politely when she saw them, never confronting them, never fighting back. He'd thought she was weak, scared, an easy target. Now he realized she hadn't been scared of them at all. She'd been choosing not to engage, choosing restraint, and that was so much worse. "We need to go," he said again, louder this time. This was a mistake. The third boy was upstairs looking through drawers in what must have been Lisa's bedroom. He opened the closet and his blood ran cold. Hanging in the back in a plastic garment bag was a full military dress uniform, pressed and pristine. Next to it were combat boots polished to a mirror shine. And on the shelf above, a helmet and more gear. This wasn't some old veteran who'd served decades ago. This stuff looked recent, well-maintained, like she could put it on tomorrow if she needed to. "Guys," he called down. "You need to see this." But before anyone could respond, they heard something that made their hearts stop. A car engine. Right outside, in the driveway, the headlights swept across the front windows. "Someone's here," the leader hissed. "Go, go, go." They scrambled for the back door, panic replacing whatever bravado they'd had. But in their rush, the youngest kid knocked over a lamp. It crashed to the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet. "House." The car engine shut off. They heard a car, door open and close. Footsteps on the front walkway. The leader grabbed the youngest kid and shoved him toward the kitchen. "Move, back door now." But they were too late. The front door opened and the lights flicked on, flooding the living room with harsh brightness. They all froze like deer in headlights. Standing in the doorway was Lisa, still in her scrubs. Car keys in one hand, and the expression on her face. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was something much more terrifying. Recognition, assessment, control. Her eyes moved from one boy to the next, counting them, categorizing them, calculating the threat. It took her maybe 2 seconds. Her stance shifted, subtle but unmistakable, weight balanced. Center of gravity lowered. Ready. The youngest kid felt his bladder almost give out. This wasn't the tired single mom from the beat-up Honda. This was someone else entirely. On the ground, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that expected to be obeyed immediately. All of you. Hands behind your heads now, nobody moved. They were too shocked, too scared. I said now. The command in her voice bypassed their brains and went straight to their bodies. All 4 boys dropped to their knees, then flat on the floor, hands behind their heads. Years of playing soldier video games hadn't prepared them for the real thing. Lisa pulled out her phone with one hand, her eyes never leaving them. She dialed 911. Yes, I need police at 247 Maple Street. I've got 4 intruders in my home. They're secured. No weapons visible. I'm detaining them until officers arrive. The operator said something, but the boys couldn't hear it. Yes, I'm trained, Lisa said. Marine Corps, 3 combat deployments. I know how to handle this. The youngest kid started crying, quiet, terrified sobs. He thought about his mom, his little sister, what this would do to them. The leader's face was pressed against the floor, and for the first time in his life, he understood what real consequences felt like. All they'd wanted was some easy money, some excitement. Instead, they'd walked into the home of someone who'd survived actual combat, someone who'd faced real enemies, not just scared families. And now, lying on her living room floor with sirens approaching in the distance, they realized just how badly they'd miscalculated. The woman they'd thought was weak had been strong all along. She'd just been choosing not to show it. The sirens got louder and louder until red and blue lights were flashing through the front windows. Lisa hadn't moved. She stood there perfectly still, watching the 4 boys on her floor like a hawk watching mice. The youngest one was still crying quietly. The leader had gone completely silent, his face pressed against the carpet. The other 2 just lay there waiting for whatever came next. 3 police cars pulled up outside. Car doors slammed, heavy footsteps on the porch. Police. We're coming in! Doors open, Lisa called out. 4 suspects, all on the ground, no weapons. Situation is secure. 2 officers entered first, hands on their belts, ready for anything. But when they saw the scene, they relaxed slightly. 4 teenage boys flat on the floor, hands behind their heads, and a woman in hospital scrubs standing calmly near the wall. Ma'am, are you the homeowner? Yes, sir. Lisa Chen, I work nights at County General. Came home because I forgot my stethoscope and found these 4 in my living room. One of the officers, older with gray at his temples, looked around at the photos on the wall. His expression changed. Marine Corps? Yes, sir, Sergeant, 3 deployments. Iraq and Afghanistan. The officer nodded with respect. Thank you for your service. You boys have any idea how lucky you are right now? None of them answered. I said, do you have any idea how lucky you are? This woman could have handled this very differently. You broke into the wrong house. The other officers began pulling the boys to their feet one by one, checking them for weapons and putting them in handcuffs. The youngest kid was shaking so badly he could barely stand. As they led the boys outside, neighbors started appearing on their porches. Word spread fast in small neighborhoods. The single mom everyone ignored had just caught 4 burglars in her house. Lisa followed them outside, and that's when she saw the parents arriving. First one car, then another. Someone must have called them the moment the police showed up. A woman jumped out of a minivan, her face pale with panic. That's my son. That's my boy. What's happening? She ran toward the youngest kid, the one who'd been crying. The officer holding him stopped her. Ma'am, your son was caught breaking into this woman's home. He's being arrested. No, there must be some mistake. My boy wouldn't do that. He's a good kid. The officer's expression was sympathetic but firm. Ma'am, we caught him inside the house. There's no mistake. The mother's legs seemed to give out. Another officer helped her stay standing. She looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his face. The shame. The guilt. Oh my God, what have you done? More parents arrived. The leader's mother came alone, pulling up in an old sedan. She looked exhausted, like she'd been working late too. When she saw her son in handcuffs, she just closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Like this was something she'd been expecting. Like this was the moment she'd been dreading for years. The third boy's parents came together, both of them yelling before they even got out of the car. Yelling at the police, yelling at their son, yelling at each other. But the fourth boy's father was different. He was a big man, intimidating, and he stormed up to the police car where his son sat in the back seat. He yanked the door open. "You stupid, stupid kid. Do you know what you've done? Do you have any idea what this means?"
Dad, shut up.
"Don't say another word." The officer intervened. "Sir, you need to step back. That's my son." "I understand, but you need to let us do our job." Lisa watched all of this from her porch. She felt tired, so tired. She'd come home to grab her stethoscope so she could check on her patients, and now she was standing in the middle of a crime scene. The older officer came up to her porch. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. These boys are looking at breaking and entering charges. Possibly burglary, depending on what they took or damaged. They didn't take anything. They didn't have time. Still, this is serious. They're juveniles, but given their ages, the DA might try them as adults." Lisa looked past him at the four boys sitting in separate police cars, at the parents in various stages of grief and anger, at the neighbors watching from their yards. Something twisted in her gut. She thought about her own kids. About Daniel getting pushed around at the bus stop. About Amy crying because someone made fun of her shoes. She thought about the spray paint on her mailbox, the trash cans knocked over, all the little cruelties these boys had inflicted. She should want them punished. She should want them to pay for what they'd done. But she also thought about where she'd been at 17. Lost. Angry. Making stupid choices. If it hadn't been for the Marines, if she hadn't found that structure and discipline, who knows where she'd have ended up. "Officer, can I ask you something?" "Of course. What happens to them now?" "Realistically?" The officer sighed.
Honestly?
"Best case, juvenile detention and probation. Worst case, if the DA pushes for adult charges, they're looking at real prison time. Criminal records that'll follow them forever. College applications rejected. Job applications thrown out. Their lives are basically over before they start." Lisa nodded slowly. "And what if I don't press charges?" The officer looked surprised. "Ma'am, they broke into your home. I know what they did. But if I don't press charges, what happens? Well, we'd have to release them. There might still be some consequences through the juvenile system, but without your cooperation, the DA can't build much of a case." Lisa looked at those boys again. At their parents. At the whole mess. "Can I talk to them first? Before you take them to the station?" The officer hesitated. "That's unusual. I'm not going to hurt them. I just want to talk." Something in her voice, or maybe the military photos he'd seen inside, made him trust her. "All right. 5 minutes. But we stay right here." Lisa walked down to the police cars. The officers opened the doors so the boys could hear her, but kept them in their seats. She looked at each one of them. Really looked at them. "I know who you are," she said. "All of you. You're the ones who've been making my kids' lives miserable for months, pushing them around, making fun of them, spray painting my mailbox." The youngest kid started crying again. The leader stared at his feet. "You thought I was weak, didn't you? Thought I was someone you could push around, someone who wouldn't fight back?" No one answered. "I've been in war zones. I've had people actually trying to kill me. I've seen things you can't even imagine. You four breaking into my house. That's not even close to the scariest thing I've dealt with." She paused, letting that sink in. "But you know what? I didn't survive 3 combat deployments just to come home and ruin 4 kids' lives. Even kids who've been making my family miserable." The leader looked up, confused, hope flickering in his eyes. "I'm going to make you an offer. One time. Take it or leave it." The parents had gathered closer now, listening. "I don't press charges. You don't get criminal records. You don't go to jail. But in exchange, you do exactly what I tell you to do for the next 6 months. Community service, counseling, and you listen to my story. You learn about where I've been and what I've seen. You learn what real strength looks like. Why would you do that?" The leader's mother asked, her voice breaking. "Why would you help them after what they did?" Lisa turned to her. "Because everyone deserves a second chance. Because I believe people can change. And because sending them to prison doesn't fix anything, it just creates more problems." She looked back at the boys. "But this is the only chance you get. You screw this up, you break the rules even once, and I press charges for everything. Breaking and entering, trespassing, harassment, everything, understand?" All 4 boys nodded, some of them crying now. "I need to hear you say it." "Yes, ma'am," they mumbled one after another. Louder. "Yes, ma'am." The older officer shook his head in disbelief. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" Lisa smiled for the first time that night. Officer, I've made decisions under enemy fire. This one's easy. She turned to the parents. Your boys and I are going to have a long talk tomorrow. All of you need to be there. 6 p.m. at my house. Don't be late. Then she went back inside, grabbed her stethoscope, and headed back to work, leaving behind a street full of stunned parents, confused police officers, and 4 teenage boys who just learned that mercy could be more powerful than punishment. The next evening, at exactly 6 o'clock, Lisa's doorbell rang. She'd been expecting it, but she still took a deep breath before opening the door. All 4 boys stood on her porch with their parents. Nobody looked comfortable. The boys stared at the ground. The parents looked exhausted, embarrassed, angry, or some combination of all 3. Come in, Lisa said simply. They filed into her living room, the same room where just 24 hours ago, these boys had been lying on the floor in handcuffs. Now they sat on her couch and the folding chairs she'd set up, their parents beside them. Lisa had sent her kids to Mrs. Patterson's house again. This conversation wasn't for them. Not yet anyway. She stood in front of the group, still in her scrubs from the day shift she'd just finished. She looked at each face, letting the silence stretch out until it became uncomfortable. The youngest boy's mother spoke first, her voice shaky. Miss Chen, I don't even know where to begin. I'm so sorry. I've been apologizing to you in my head for 24 hours straight, and it still doesn't feel like enough. I taught him better than this, she continued, starting to cry. I worked 2 jobs to keep him in a good school, to give him opportunities, and this is what he does. Breaks into someone's home? Her son looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. We're sorry too, said the 3rd boy's father. There's no excuse for what they did, none. If you want to press charges, we'd understand. They deserve whatever consequences come their way. Lisa nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. But I meant what I told the police last night. I'm giving them a second chance. But make no mistake, this isn't going to be easy for any of you. She pulled out a folder she'd prepared. Inside were printed agreements, one for each boy. 200 hours of community service over the next 6 months. That's about 7 hours a week. You'll be working at the Veterans Center downtown, helping elderly vets with whatever they need. Yard work, home repairs, grocery shopping, companionship, whatever I assign you. The boys glanced at each other nervously. In addition, you'll attend counseling sessions, 1 hour every week with a therapist who specializes in adolescent behavior. Your parents will need to arrange that and pay for it. One of the fathers opened his mouth to protest the cost, then closed it. What choice did he have? This was still better than his son having a criminal record. And finally, once a month you'll meet with me, right here. And I'm going to tell you stories about my time in the service, about what I saw, about what real courage looks like and what real consequences mean. Lisa sat down across from them. But before any of that starts, I need to understand something. I need to know why. Why my family? Why my kids? The room fell silent again. The boys squirmed in their seats. I'm waiting, Lisa said, her voice calm but firm. And we're not moving forward until someone gives me an honest answer. Finally, the leader spoke up. His voice was barely above a whisper. Because you looked like an easy target. Look at me when you're talking to me. He raised his eyes, and Lisa saw something there. Not just shame, but pain. Old pain. Go on, she said. You were alone. Single mom, old car, obviously struggling. And I don't know. It made me angry. Why would that make you angry? He struggled with the words. His mother reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Because my mom's the same way. After my dad left, she's been working herself to death. We lost our house. Had to move in with my grandma. And I hate it. I hate seeing her like that. I hate that we went from having everything to having nothing. And when I saw you, I guess I took it out on you. On your kids. Like if I could make you feel small, maybe I wouldn't feel so small myself. His mother started crying quietly beside him. Lisa felt something shift in her chest. She understood that anger, that helplessness. She'd felt it herself after the divorce when she'd been trying to figure out how to survive as a single parent. What about the rest of you? She asked. The youngest kid spoke up, his voice cracking. My parents just got divorced. Like finalized last month, and my dad moved to another state with his new girlfriend. He didn't even fight for custody, just left, and I've been so angry all the time and I didn't know what to do with it. The 3rd boy was harder to crack. He sat there stubbornly silent until his father nudged him hard. Tell her. I was just following them, he muttered. I didn't even want to break in. I wanted them to think I was cool. I wanted to fit in. And you thought breaking into someone's home would make you cool? He had no answer for that. The fourth boy, who'd barely said anything, finally spoke. I've got no excuse. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway because I thought it would be fun. That's it. That's the truth. Lisa appreciated the honesty, even if the reason was terrible. She stood up and walked to her wall of military photos. She took down one of the shadow boxes and brought it back, setting it on the coffee table where everyone could see it. You see this medal? The Bronze Star? I got this for pulling 2 of my fellow Marines out of a burning vehicle after an IED attack. I was 23 years old, same age some of you will be in just a few years. She pointed to another medal. This one's the Purple Heart. I got hit by shrapnel from a mortar round. Spent 2 weeks in a field hospital, then went right back to my unit. The boys stared at the medals, really seeing them for the first time. I'm not telling you this to brag, Lisa continued. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Every single day over there I was scared. Every patrol could have been my last. Every decision could have gotten someone killed. But I did my job anyway. You know why? They shook their heads. Because real strength isn't about intimidating people weaker than you. It's not about proving how tough you are by hurting others. Real strength is about protecting people, serving something bigger than yourself, making hard choices even when you're terrified. She sat back down, her expression softening slightly. I could see you boys as criminals, as threats, and maybe that's what you deserve. But when I look at you, I see 4 kids who are hurting and made terrible choices because of it. I see 4 kids who could turn into something better if someone gives them a chance. The leader's mother wiped her eyes. Why are you doing this, really? You don't owe us anything. You owe us less than nothing. Lisa thought about that question. She'd been asking herself the same thing all day. Because when I was 18, I was angry too. My home life was a mess. I was making bad decisions. And instead of ending up in jail, I ended up in a recruiting office. A Marine sergeant saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He gave me a chance to turn my life around. She looked at the 4 boys. I'm giving you the same chance that Sergeant gave me, but you have to take it. You have to do the work. You have to actually want to change. She handed each boy one of the printed agreements. Read these. Sign them if you're serious. If you're not, if you think this is going to be easy or you're going to half-heartedly go through the motions, then don't sign. I'll call the police right now and we'll do this the legal way. The youngest boy didn't hesitate. He grabbed a pen from his pocket and signed immediately, his hand shaking as he wrote his name. One by one, the others followed. When all 4 agreements were signed, Lisa collected them and put them back in her folder. You start this Saturday, 8 a.m. at the Veteran Center on Oak Street. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. You're going to be doing yard work for Mr. Patterson, a 78-year-old Vietnam vet who can't maintain his property anymore. Mr. Patterson? The youngest kid asked. Like Mrs. Patterson's husband? The lady next door to you? That's right. You'll be helping the husband of the woman who watches my children, the woman you could have traumatized if you'd been caught breaking in while she was there. The weight of that settled over them. You're dismissed. I'll see you Saturday morning.
And boys, don't be late.
Marines are never late. As they filed out, the leader's mother stopped at the door. Thank you, she whispered to Lisa. You didn't have to do this. Lisa smiled sadly. Yeah, I did. Because if we don't help our kids when they mess up, who will? After they left, Lisa sat alone in her quiet living room, looking at the signed agreements. She hoped she was doing the right thing. She hoped these boys actually wanted to change. Because if they didn't, if they let her down, it would break something in her that combat never could. But she had to try. She had to believe that people could be better than their worst moments. That's what being strong really meant. 6 months later, Lisa stood in her backyard watching the 4 boys put the finishing touches on a wheelchair ramp they'd built for Mr. Patterson. The old veteran sat on his porch, supervising and occasionally shouting instructions, even though the boys had already figured out what they were doing. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in spring, and this was their final project. Their 200 hours were almost complete. Lisa barely recognized these kids anymore. The leader, the tall one who'd organized the break-in, was now the first one to arrive every Saturday morning. He'd lost that angry edge. that need to prove himself by tearing others down. Last month, he'd even started talking about joining the Marines after high school. Lisa had given him some recruiting pamphlets but told him to think hard about it. The military wasn't a cure-all. It was a commitment. The youngest kid had stopped crying in their monthly meetings after the second session. Now he talked openly about his feelings, about his dad leaving, about learning to process anger in healthier ways. His counselor said he was making real progress. His mom said he smiled again, something he hadn't done in over a year. The third boy, the follower, had found his own path. Turned out he was really good with his hands. He'd discovered he loved building things, fixing things. Mr. Patterson had started teaching him basic carpentry, and now the kid was talking about trade school instead of trying to impress the wrong crowd. The fourth boy had been the hardest case, the one with no excuse who'd done it just for fun, but even he had come around slowly. He'd spent hours listening to the stories of the old veterans at the center, hearing about real sacrifice, real courage. Something had shifted in him. He'd started volunteering extra hours beyond what was required. "That's good," Mr. Patterson called out. "Now test it. Make sure it's sturdy." The leader grabbed the wheelchair and rolled it up and down the ramp several times, smooth, solid, perfect. Mr. Patterson nodded approvingly. "You boys did good work. Real good work." Coming from a man who'd built half the houses in this neighborhood back in his construction days, that meant something. The boys stood a little straighter. Lisa walked over to inspect their work. She ran her hand along the railing, checking the bolts, the stability. "It was professional quality. I'm impressed," she said. "Mr. Patterson, what do you think? Does this pass inspection?" The old vet wheeled himself to the ramp and rolled up it, then back down, then up again. He had a big grin on his weathered face. "Best ramp in the neighborhood. Better than the one my own son built, and he's a contractor." "Don't tell him I said that," the boys laughed. Real laughs. Not the mean, mocking laughs Lisa had heard from them months ago. Later that afternoon, after they'd cleaned up all the tools and materials, Lisa gathered the four boys in her living room one last time. The same room where this had all started. The same room where they'd been caught, where they'd faced consequences, where they'd been given a second chance. 200 hours, Lisa said, looking at each of them. "You've completed your community service. So let me ask you something. What did you learn?" The youngest kid spoke first. "I learned that being angry is okay, but what you do with that anger is what matters. I was so mad at my dad for leaving that I wanted everyone else to hurt too. But that just made everything worse," the leader nodded. "I learned that strength isn't about making yourself feel big by making others feel small. Real strength is about lifting people up. Like you did with us. You could have destroyed our futures, but you chose to help us instead." The third boy added, "I learned that I don't need to follow idiots to have friends. And I learned that I'm actually good at something. Mr. Patterson says I have a real gift for building. Nobody ever told me I was good at anything before." The fourth boy took longer to answer. "I learned that actions have consequences, and that the rush you get from doing something wrong never lasts, but the guilt stays forever. If you hadn't given us this chance, I'd be living with that guilt and a criminal record. Instead, I got to do something good. Something that actually matters." Lisa felt her throat tighten. She'd been so uncertain 6 months ago, wondering if this was the right call. If these boys would actually change or just go through the motions. But they had changed. Really changed. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "All of you." The youngest kid's eyes got watery. "Miss Chen, I need to tell you something. That first day when we broke in, when I saw all your medals and photos, I was so scared. But I was also confused because my dad always said that military people were just bullies with uniforms, that they liked hurting people." He paused, wiping his eyes. "But you're not like that at all. You're the opposite. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and you've never hurt anyone. You helped us even when we deserved to be punished. You showed me what real strength looks like." Lisa had to look away for a moment, composing herself. The leader pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. We all wrote you letters. We were supposed to do it as part of our counseling, but we wanted to read them to you in person. You don't have to." Lisa started. "We want to," he said firmly. One by one, they read their letters. Apologies for what they'd done. Gratitude for the second chance. Promises to be better. Stories about how this experience had changed them. About the veterans they'd met. About the things they'd learned. When they finished, Lisa had to wipe her own eyes. "You know what the hardest part of being in combat was?" she asked them. It wasn't the danger. It wasn't being away from home. It was watching good people make mistakes that got them hurt or killed. Mistakes they could never take back. She looked at each boy. You four made a huge mistake. A mistake that could have ruined your lives. But you got lucky. You got a second chance. Most people don't get that. So what are you going to do with it? Not waste it, the leader said immediately. I promise you, Miss Chen, we're not going to waste it. The others echoed the same sentiment. There was a knock at the door. Lisa opened it to find all four sets of parents standing there, along with Daniel and Amy, who Mrs. Patterson had just brought home. Daniel and Amy looked nervous. They'd been told their mom wanted them to meet these boys, but they didn't know why yet. They just knew these were the teenagers who'd been mean to them. Daniel, Amy, come here, Lisa said gently. Her children walked over cautiously, staying close to their mom. These are the boys who broke into our house 6 months ago. They're also the boys who've spent the last 6 months trying to make things right. Daniel's eyes went wide. Amy grabbed her mom's hand. The leader stepped forward first. He looked terrified, but he did it anyway. Daniel, I'm the one who pushed you at the bus stop and said mean things about your clothes. I'm really, really sorry. That was wrong. You didn't deserve that. He turned to Amy. And I'm sorry for making fun of you. There's nothing wrong with your clothes or your family or anything about you. I was just being cruel because I was hurting, and that's not an excuse. The other boys followed, each apologizing for their specific actions. For the spray paint, for knocking over the trash cans, for making the kids feel unsafe in their own neighborhood. Daniel looked up at his mom, confused. Why are you telling us this? Lisa knelt down to his level. Because I wanted you to see that people can change. That even people who do bad things can learn to do better. These boys made terrible choices, but they've worked hard to become better people. Amy, always the bolder of the two, looked directly at the leader. Are you going to be mean to us again? No, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Never again. I promise. Over the next hour, something remarkable happened. The parents thanked Lisa through tears. The boys showed Daniel and Amy photos of all the work they'd done at the Veterans Center. Mr. Patterson came over and told stories about how much these boys had helped him and the other vets. Slowly, the tension dissolved. Not completely. Some wounds take longer to heal, but enough. Enough for a new beginning. As everyone prepared to leave, the youngest boy's mother pulled Lisa aside. You saved my son, she whispered. You saved all of them. How can I ever thank you? Lisa smiled. Raise a good man. That's all the thanks I need. That evening, after everyone had gone home and her kids were asleep, Lisa sat in her living room looking at the wall of military photos. She thought about all the things she'd survived. The deployments, the combat, the injuries, the divorce, the struggle of being a single parent. But this, what she'd done with these 4 boys, felt like the most important mission of her life. She'd been trained to fight enemies, but she'd chosen to save them instead. And in doing so, she'd helped them save themselves. That was real strength. That was real courage. Not the kind that came from a gun or a fist, but the kind that came from believing people deserved second chances. From believing that mercy could be more powerful than punishment. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the leader. Thank you for seeing something in us that we didn't see in ourselves. I'm going to make you proud. I promise. Lisa smiled and typed back, You already have. She looked at her children's photos on the mantel, at Daniel and Amy, safe and happy sleeping in their beds. This neighborhood that had felt so hostile 6 months ago now felt like home. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting back, it's reaching out, and that's exactly what she'd done.